Welcome to
Urban Beginnings.
a podcast about navigating urban planning and its impacts on community. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Urban Beginnings. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Amy Nguyen, an urban planner who works for Yolo County with a deep background in the private sector urban planning. Hi, Amy. Welcome. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hi, yes, of course. First of all, thank you both for inviting me on your podcast. I am extremely happy and honored to be here. Again, my name is Amy Nguyen. I am 30 years old. I am a Sacramento native. I have my educational background in urban studies and planning and a minor in sustainability. And over the years, the past 6 years, I have been in the home building and development industry, where I focused on contract administration and management, land use planning and entitlements, project planning for affordable housing, and mixed use development. And now I recently pivoted over to the public sector and am a planner at Yolo County.
Awesome. Congratulations on your new position, by the way. We're going to get right into it. So, yeah, we love to begin by asking folks to talk a little bit about sort of how they got into urban planning. I know Rogelio and I have entered into the field in pretty different ways. And so, what was your first experience with urban planning, and how did that experience shape your academic and professional endeavors?
So when I first, was reviewing this question, to me it sounded like what triggered my passion for urban planning. And I would say that from a young age, that would probably be my early teens, when I first took a trip down to Los Angeles with my aunt at the time, who was doing her undergrad for UCLA, or at UCLA. And so, when I was brought down with her, we did a tour around city of Los Angeles, and I was just fascinated with the culture, LA streetscapes, and primarily the aesthetics of certain buildings in downtown LA. And then we also went up to the observatory, and that streetscape right there, and this was like almost 15 years ago. So the congestion was like a little bit better. So that view just struck me to my core. I'm like, oh my God, I love cities. I love major cities. So I could probably say that that was my first initial um, experience with or trigger for urban planning. During my undergrad back in 2016, that was my last year, right before I was graduating at CSUN, Northridge State. I was doing my internship with the nonprofit previously known as Leadership for Urban Renewal Network, now doing business as Inclusive Action for the City. And they are based in Boyle Heights, which is historically Latino underserved community in East Los Angeles. And through this nonprofit, I had the opportunity to help organize lot activations with Free Lots Angeles Collaborative, a partnership of organizations working to activate vacant lots in underserved communities. So it was a really cool experience. I got to witness vacant parcels in that area be transformed into spaces for outdoor recreation, exercise, community gatherings. Additionally, I got to help assist with the nonprofit's Planning and Land Use Strategy Summit, also known as Plus Two. So this day-long event uh, brought like urbanists and urban planning enthusiasts, right, and professionals together to engage in conversations around urban topics and issues such as infrastructure, the informal economy, like street vending and housing. So I would say the combination of those two, and then obviously taking my first elective, I think it was Intro to the Urban Scene with Professor Claude Willie. That was a struck to my trigger for urban planning. So, yeah.
For sure. So like when you came down to CSUN, were you undecided or did you already like were you already declared or
I was undecided. However, I had kind of like this environmental um, passion. Like I wanted somewhere, I wanted to find a career that's blended between um, something along environmental policy and planning. I didn't know much of planning, but something that revolved around like cities, architect, in that space. And until I took an elective at CSUN, um, which was, what I mentioned previously, intro to the urban scene, that literally tied everything together for me. And then as I progressed through my studies there, I also came across sustainability, which that kind of brought me back to freshman year of high school when I first took, science class that really talked about the climate impacts, right? And climate change. Those were very new topics to me as a young adult. And so going into college and learning sustainability and also having the opportunity to declare that as a minor, I'm like, this is perfect.
you kind of touched up on a little bit, but just life after graduation, like did you find a job in the field? What were some of the challenges you faced and how did you work towards it?
Yeah, so life after graduation for me was a little rough, to be fully transparent. Although I was able to find a land use planning position at an architecture firm or land use firm in Los Angeles, probably 3 months postgraduate graduation. Um, Unfortunately, my time there was cut short. Only lasted there for about 5, 6 months. I didn't have any other job offers online on the table, and so I'm like, well, if this didn't work out, what can I do? So I had to recuperate and go back home to my here hometown Sacramento. And between 2017 and 2018, so for a year, I was holding different positions in and outside of the planning field. And it wasn't until I came across a position, land development coordinator with a national home builder, that touched upon land use planning, contract administration and management, entitlements. And I'm like, okay, this is somewhat within the interdisciplinary field. Was my gateway into the home building industry. From there, I grew. I was there for almost 2 years. The pandemic happened and there was a mass layoff. And then I got poached by another land developer. I was there for 3 years, really expanded my knowledge around um, project management, project planning, being the primary liaison between a development team and the public departments, right, that we were working along so that our project could be approved. I'm not going to lie, that industry taught me a lot of valuable lessons, but one transparent thing, there's this concept of work hard, play hard there in that sector. And to me, I struggled with that because I don't know if you guys are familiar with home building, but home building has always been pretty white male dominant. And to be transparent, I was like the only person of color on my team. And so that, to me, I already felt sort of like excluded, uncomfortable, not feeling like I 100% belonged. And so fast forward to last year, I experienced another layoff. And that's another downside about this sector is that it's very unstable and inconsistent. And so my heart said, enough is enough. I cannot go through another layoff. I need to get back to my roots, my passion. And that was either through traditional planning and sustainability, somewhere in that realm. And so, to put it, you know, to be vulnerable on your platform, right? I experienced almost 10 months of unemployment. And during that time, I really healed and tried to figure out what better looked like for me because I wanted to pursue another path that led me back to my true passion, which was environmental planning, essentially. So during that time, I applied to grad school and was applying to positions at in the private sector. And I also tapped into my creativity and expression. That's when I launched my creative passion project, Elements of SAC. And so while all that was happening, got into grad school. So I will be doing my graduate program this fall at UC Davis. And the program is Environmental Policy and Management with specializations, city and regional planning, and environmental justice. That's where I'm at right now. I had to pivot, and those challenges was really facing a lot of rejections, right, with application process and rounds in the public sector, but finally made it in, and now I can start this new chapter.
For sure. Well, Amy, I just want to say, we crossed paths back in Cal State Northridge for a few classes. We have some mutual friends, and I always thought you're a great person, great to work with. And sometimes in life we have to go through, up and downs, and I feel like you really um, have, knowing the type of person you are. Like I know that you battle to the end and always see the, I guess, the good in things. So I'm glad you did take a break and healed. That's very important. And then also, like, sometimes if a door closes, more open. So I congratulate you, and starting this new chapter, getting accepted to UC Davis, and good luck with your new job in school. If that's something, are you gonna? I'm assuming you're gonna be full time, right? It's like two. Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it's gonna be probably like our program, but I know how it'll be a full day of work and then classwork after. So, like always, sending you good vibes on that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to rewind too, like, what a full circle, right? Like, Rogelio, you and I, we met at CISA. We did the same program together. And you're featuring me on your creative passion project platform. And you're speaking to me about my passion project and us being planners. Like, how incredible is this? And I just wanted to highlight that. So yeah, that's awesome. I am cheering to you from this side.
It's amazing to I know I've kind of just met you, but it's amazing to kind of hear your journey and have a breadth of experience that truly makes you a dynamic and multifaceted planner. I really, really appreciate you sharing your experiences with us. Yeah, we definitely look forward to hearing more about your educational journey. Congrats again. It's a really exciting time. So kudos to you. And then kind of going back a little bit to what you were saying before, I love how you talk about kind of needing to go back to your roots. And, through this process of healing, you were able to land a role as a junior planner with a focus on environmental planning, which is something that you're really passionate about. And I kind of just wanted to see if you wanted to say anything else about sort of this new chapter for you about, yeah, just this is a transition for you. And I know it's something that you've been like really going after. And so I commend you for that. And I've had similar struggles, full transparency as well, kind of getting into public sector planning. So yeah, if there's anything else that you just want to add, I want to give you the space to kind of talk about this next chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going back to the application process, right? Like that within itself, as you're sort of at that assistant associate level position, and given my experience with the private sector, I thought I had the necessary skill set to go in at the public sector as an associate level. But that was not the case. Like, I definitely made it to many rounds of interviews, surpassed like the initial phases of the interview process where they check your resume, cover letter, and then you get called for interview, and then I will make it to this all the way until the second, third round of interview, and then nothing, no responses. And so at times I did feel defeated, and I was questioning whether, you know, uh, if it was because I didn't have any prior public experience, um, and that was preventing me to get these jobs, and it's just a struggle. And so I had to put my pride aside, and I was just like, well, if you can't accept me as an associate level, then I guess I will have to apply for the junior positions. And that's what I did. And I am grateful nonetheless, because it is a foot in the door and it is a different pace. But I can come in, right, with the knowledge that I've gained from the private sector and use that as an asset, right? Like, I know what it's like to work with a development company. I know their critical project timeline and schedules, and kind of working it on from the other side. It's going to be such an interesting um, experience, and I can't wait to share the knowledge that I accumulated over the years and bring that forth to my new team. Um, yeah, something that I was missing in my previous experience was really collaboration and teamwork. I felt very siloed. I was siloed for sure. Um, you have to put your head down, work hard, and I have questions to myself. And that shouldn't be the case in a workspace, right? Like, we're all on the same team here. If I have a question that is related to something that someone has years of experience in, like I'm talking 20 plus years, and you can't answer questions, it was just a baffling experience. So that's why I am kind of glad that excuse me, everything happened for a reason. And I was able to meet with some of my new team members at Yolo County, and how incredible. What a fresh collaboration here. And so just wanted to point that out.
For sure. Well, yeah, I'm glad you're walking in or going to go into a different culture, where you might feel more appreciated or sorry, let me take that back, where at least they appreciate more of your work and your experience and what you bring to the table. I certainly feel for you, and I'm so against people gatekeeping information, just making your coworkers' life harder and just literally not necessarily giving you a handout, but just some sort of direction on how to answer a certain question or look more into researching. So I'm so happy that you met some of your new soon to be coworkers, and it seems like hopefully that culture is a little more inviting and more fun, and and you guys share the same passion. can just kind of switching a little bit. Amy, I know you talked a little bit about community or roots going back to Sacramento. Can you tell us a little bit about your passion project, Elements of Sacramento? How was being a native of Sacramento inspired this project?
Okay, so I did want to answer that second part first. Um, Before leaving to college, right, I was living in a really suburban part of Sacramento, which is Elk Grove. There was just lack of amenities, lack of culture, lack of placemaking. And so when I had left, um, I was leaving behind in my mind just suburban, just small town, right? And so I went to LA and I'm like, oh my God, big city, different cultures. I was exposed to so many different cultures. Like, there's not a lot of Koreans in Sacramento, um, Guatemalans, Salvadorians. One of my college best friends is half Guatemalan, half Mexican. I didn't know about these cultures until I left Sacramento. And so, um, being a Sacramento native, inspiring this passion project, right? Coming with a really broader lens of outside of Sacramento and coming back in 2017 with just a reinvigorated, like, love. Like, I like fell in love with Sacramento all over again because it changed so much culturally, and there was new development that really uh, focused on pedestrian scale types of development, mixed use, right? There was a lot of new mixed use development that occurred here in Midtown. And so when I was coming back, I'm like, oh my God, this is Sacramento? This is cool. Like, where's when I was younger, right? And so me coming back to Sacramento in 2017 and living here, it's now 2024, I've just grown to love Sacramento from a different lens, from a more mature lens as an adult. And, but one of the things that have always remained, right, is my Vietnamese culture. And um, South Sacramento primarily, has a predominantly large Vietnamese community, a Southeast Asian community, um, Little Saigon, but there are other Southeast Asian that really visit that area often. And so when you talk about Southeast, right, think of Lao, think of Cambodians, think of Mien and Hmong. And so um, primarily Mien and Hmong, they are small indigenous Asians that derive from parts of Vietnam, parts of Laos, parts of Thailand. And so going down to LA, I didn't see a lot of those communities down there. So it was such an interesting uh, transition for me because I'm like, oh, like, although I'm learning and am being exposed to different cultures down in Los Angeles, I still have this like very proud, I'm Southeast Asian, and how do I represent that while I'm here and while I'm down there? So it was really fascinating. But anyway, so going back to um, the creation of Elements of Sacramento, it was my way of trying to bridge my passion for planning and community and finding a way to further highlight local businesses, small entrepreneurs, artists, and connecting with them through storytelling, right? So finding a way to elevate these Sacramento folks through their lens, through their story. Because what I've been seeing online, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, when people are trying to support a business or highlight a business, that's through their products, right? Or reviewing their food or the restaurant, but they're not really dialing it back to. I'm like, there really isn't that space here online where I'm getting to know the owner, the artist, at a personal level. Like, what's their story? What was their, trigger or inspiration to start this business, to start, this product? And so that was my way of kind of bridging the two, and was born my passion project of Elements of Sacramento. It was a way to give back to my community by elevating these voices here in Sacramento, primarily Black, Indigenous, people of color. And yeah, just honoring them in a way that's different than what we're used to seeing on social media platforms. So, yeah.
So, thank you so much for all that information. I know I mentioned before that I've only lived in Sacramento for about 3 years, and I have found that people from Sacramento really have embodied pride for their city. And so I feel like that really shines forth with you. And it makes me really excited to live here and kind of to learn more about the, the city and kind of just get a little bit more involved. We talk a lot about sort of elevating the voices of others, and storytelling is something that's really important to me, and I love that you've sort of kind of taken a new direction with that. A big topic right now is the role of third places, and so I think there's a lot of connections with sort of the storytelling that you're doing and this idea of third places. So, how do you perceive the role of third places in our communities? And do you believe, or what do you believe makes them vital for social interaction and community cohesion?
Yeah, great question. So when I perceive the role of third places in our, it really feeds into a city or region's identity, right? And what popular music venues, restaurants, coffee shops, it really sets a place apart. And so if you're coming to Sacramento, for example, right, you think of Old Sacramento, you think of Golden One Center, those places unique. It's the intention behind it. It's cultural preservation. It's thoughtful placemaking. Essentially, third places play a vital role in social interaction and community cohesion. And one thing as a planner, right, is how do we make these third places even better for future generations to come? And that's tying back to my comment earlier. It's through thoughtful placemaking. So which feeds into identity for a city or region.
But yeah, Amy, like honestly, like your answers are so organic, and believe it or not, like if maybe there's a listener out there that might be going through a situation like you, and you might inspire them to keep going. So we appreciate you being, we appreciate your answers and also just accepting to talk about them here. So what are some strategies an urban planner can practice to preserve and promote the cultural heritage like within a community?
I would say to be open minded, right? Be inclusive in your practice, know the communities that you are serving. So, always finding to engage public participation, whether that's through community workshops, tabling events, to get to know your, community on a more intimate level, providing technical assistance and so forth. So when it comes down to it, it's really listening to what your community has to say. It if it's just an issue that they're having, right? And acknowledging and celebrating the different ethnic enclaves that your city or region has too. I think those are the biggest strategies or practices an urban planner can preserve. Uh, just always being inclusive and intersectional, and understanding the community that you serve. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think understanding the community that you serve is, vital. And we've talked quite a bit about that. And I think, yeah, a lot of this sort of probably it resonates with me, and I'm sure it probably resonates with Rogelio. And that kind of leads into another question I wanted to ask you. I think I haven't quite figured out how I feel about the distinction between place and space. And, there's many different ideas about this relationship, whether they exist as one within another, or if they're just kind of separate. So I'm curious if you make any distinction between space and place that impacts your understanding of urban environments and community dynamics.
Well, I think a place holds more value, right? In the sense that it's more meaningful because it's considering both not just the physical um, aspect of it, but the social parts, the social aspects as well. And like identity, like I was saying before, or community gathering. A place is where memories are created. That's my thought process when it comes to this the distinction between space and place. Space is okay, this is just an empty vacant lot. What can I do with it? Is it usable or not? You know, as opposed to a place through thoughtful placemaking, how can this be functional and usable for the community? And so I think those are two different distinctions. It's just what you make or what you create out of that place or that space.
Yeah. So, Amy, how do kind of going back to elements of SAC, like, how do you think? How do interviews affect the impact, like, of storytelling and its capacity to preserve cultural narratives?
So my choice to interview on my platform was really a way to it was a way to allow them to control their own narratives, right? And share their stories and experience through their lens, right? Because, going back to social media again, right? The person that is an influencer and is trying to just get views and, um, share their 2 cents on this establishment, you're not really understanding. Like, it takes a lot of work to, one, obtain business license, right? Two, growing a business. Three, like, attract customers or, you know, um, I'm thinking from like an artist perspective, like getting all the necessary equipment or um, long process to get to a product, to get to a business. And I think we don't really understand the value of that. And so that was my way of like, hey, let me allow you to tell your story because that's valuable. And it can be inspiring for others because I think one thing that we lack in um, general is entrepreneurship. Kind of thinking out the box, and not following a traditional path of pursuing a 9 to 5, going to college, because in our country it's student loan, and pursuing higher education doesn't always lead to success, unfortunately. And with inflation, entrepreneurship is like another avenue that can be even more lucrative in some cases. And so, why not take the time to sit down, have a conversation um, through storytelling, and be inspired, be pick up tools from this person and allowing them to share that with the world. I think just going to hold more space for other individuals to think outside of the box too. And I that was the intent really behind um, my passion project. So
For sure. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned, just the whole process to start a business, just even coming up with the money, right? Like, I'm sure, they might not get into all that detail, but just sometimes like like for example, coffee, right? Like we all drink coffee here, and sometimes I've seen people that start like in carts, just serving coffee, and then they'll get a little spot, and then something a little the spot that's a little bigger, and that's good to see them progress that way. But sometimes there's a lot of sort of equity that goes into it, that you know once they reach a certain like that solo spot in the in a downtown area, or whatnot, that people might see is like, oh, they started here, like that's they might not know the whole roots or history of them. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to more of your work and elements of SAC, and just like you said, learning more about just Sacramento in general. I think Sacramento is a very, very cool city. I've been there a few times. I have a cousin that lives up there, and yeah. So again, I appreciate elements of SAC.
and you didn't come to visit me?
Well, the thing is,
We'll have to cross paths one of these days in person. I'm still hoping for an herbs Seasun herbs reunion. So
yeah.
we should make that happen soon.
Okay. So Amy, thank you again for your time. Before we end, do you have any advice for aspiring planners preparing to enter school or the field?
Yes. So my advice for any aspiring planners would be to lead with passion and authenticity. The work is inclusive and intersectional. Understand all the communities that you are serving. Uh, you know, as planners, we are viewed as experts, right, in our field. And so we need to uphold the most, professionalism, the highest level of professionalism, and be resourceful and knowledgeable, while also being understanding and empathetic towards especially more vulnerable communities. And so, um, you know, going back to what I said initially, um, being inclusive and intentional. And lastly, cultivating um, collaboration and synergy amongst your peers, colleagues, and mentors. So, yeah, I think those would be my little takeaways.
For sure. I was telling Blair a little bit of when I first met you. I think it was Woldemanuel's class, and it was one of the like the intro. I think I f- we were talking about the broken glass theory. Like it was like one of those intro urban planning classes, and I remember like I told Blair, like I was like, wow, like she's like so like bold, inspiring, like when you really spoke up about your personal experience. Sometimes not necessarily personal experience, but you can tell like your answers were very like coming from like authentic, and that's something that at the time I was again, I was undecided, and I was still trying to, because I was trying to get into like construction management, but I was taking intro urban planning classes, and to me that was you were some of the few people that early on in my I guess my education career or trajectory that really inspired me to really be that person to speak up about my personal experiences as well in my community, because you um your family's from Vietnamese, right? Vietnam, yes. Sorry. um and my parents growing up in a immigrant family, like from Mexico, and it was also just always listening to other people's like experience. I'm like, oh, like I feel like I have a different view, a different perspective of communities, of the populations, and I'm like, not all these theories sometimes don't always cover everything, and I'm like, okay, this is my opportunity to really, you know, and to really like go back to my roots and try to speak up for them, or have provide them with the education or even tools or knowledge for them to speak up. So how you explain elements of sac, like that was kind of like our intentions behind Urban Beginnings as well, just to highlight those, like those really authentic organic projects, and people in communities that are they're really for the people instead of just oriented by money, so um yeah, again, thank you for sharing that.
Of course, and thank you, Rogelio, because when I recall our collaboration, our work as students together in undergrad, right? I always felt that um, you were trying to figure it out, and you were inspired and wanted to pursue urban planning. So we were all kind of in the same boat of like, oh, is this really the career path we wanted to take? And, we finished, we graduated, but it was like, what's next? And then I heard like through the grapevine, like you got into USC and you became a planner at like city of Bakersfield. And I'm like, holy shit, that's my friend from undergrad doing all these incredible things. And so, like I said, full circle, uh, how we started initially as aspiring planners, and now we are, and that we can practice that not just at our 9 to 5, but outside and uh, being our through our work, but also in our creative passion projects. And so, yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity.
I think we all did. And before we go, I just want to say that really quick, everybody that I met, you included, has just been so open about like your experiences, like trials, tribulations, successes, the pathway to kind of get to where you're at now. And I love like that people are so passionate. Like I worked in the Tenderloin for 10 years, which is like not very typical, and leaving that neighborhood was really difficult for me. I was just like so deeply attached to the people and the community. And so, like, really, you guys are the reason that like I do this on the side. And I just like seriously, like, thank you for loving it as much as I do. It's